don't know if he's being cynical or not, but he certainly has to know that what the Catholic understanding of James, the brother of Jesus, in the New Testament is, and it just seems like he's taking it for granted that Jesus had, a brother of shared DNA. And I'm just wondering, I don't want to believe he's cynical, but what could possibly be someone as erudite as N.T. Wright and someone
Sure.
like, and I agree, is what could possibly be an argument from his perspective?
Well, first of all, in Matthew chapter 13, we read in verse 55, the crowd speaking of Jesus says, "Is this not the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary? Are not his brethren James and Joseph, Simon and Judas? Are not all his sisters here with us? Where did this man get all these things?" Now, so there we actually identify James as the brother, in the mind of the crowd, identified as the brother of Jesus. A couple of things to note about that passage. One of them is they identify him as Joseph's son, all right, which of course he wasn't, and Matthew himself says that that he wasn't. All right, but now flip over to Matthew 27, and we read at the foot of the cross, all right, ministering to him were Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee. So now we have the James and Joseph, who were previously identified as the brothers of Jesus, are now identified as the children of this woman named Mary. And we got you can just poke a stick at the New Testament, you hit somebody named Mary, and the Marys are just fallen off the cart in the first century. All right. And then you go over to John chapter 19, and that very same Mary is identified as the wife of Clopas. All right, so not, and a relative of the Blessed Virgin, so not the Blessed Virgin Mary. So there's evidence internal to the text that these characters were cousins of Jesus, not biological siblings. And you don't have to go outside the text for evidence of that. All right. Now, as to what would motivate N.T. Wright, well, I'm a big fan of N.T. Wright, and N.T. Wright's one of the reasons that I became a Catholic. And that's pertinent to your question, because N.T. Wright has led a lot of people into the Catholic Church. And from what I understand, having read him, that just bugs the stew out of him. All right? It really bothers him. It really does. I mean, he's not a Catholic. He's intentionally not Catholic. He's very impatient with a lot of Catholic claims. And he's perfectly well aware that people read his books, and from those books they derive a Catholic vision of the church and a Catholic vision of salvation, and then make the logical jump and become Catholic. And that really gets under his skin. All right. And he said so. Okay. So now I'm speculating, but there are places, not just, the obvious Protestant Catholic differences. There are places where Wright takes a position that he knows flies in the face of tradition. And Wright, although so many things he says are amenable to a Catholic interpretation, he really does believe at some level, although I think differently than most Protestants, at some level in the idea of sola scriptura, all right? That the data set, if you will, for deriving the content of Christian faith are the canonical texts. And in fact, even within his own tradition, within Anglicanism or within Protestantism, there are those that take him on, that really don't appreciate N.T. Wright because he takes positions that they recognize as being contrary to their own Protestant tradition. And he always comes back and sort of, pounds his fist and says, look, are you guys sola scriptura Protestants or not? I'm not going to be held captive to any dogmatic formula that's the fruit of tradition, whether that's Calvinist tradition, Lutheran tradition, or even Chalcedonian tradition. A Chalcedonian would be the doctrine of Christ that came from the Council of Chalcedon, which most Anglicans adhere to. All right, and that's of course Catholic doctrine as well. And I think the scariest part of Wright's theology for me personally is that he seems to me to be Nestorian in his view of Jesus. Now, Nestorius was a 5th century heretic who denied that Mary was the mother of God, and set up a kind of division in the person of Christ between the human Christ and then the divine Logos united to the person. All right, and Wright seems to talk this way because there are times when Wright will say things like, Christ suggesting that Christ did not know he was divine, or that Christ kind of grew in his understanding of his own divinity or his own messianic state or something like that, that suggests a kind of division in the personality of Jesus. And he must know I know he knows, because he's brilliant, that's a Nestorian position. All right. Now, why would he do that? Well, I think that while he's really, really interesting in what he does with sacred scripture, I think sometimes Wright is keen to show how he can sort of exegete his own understanding of Christianity directly from the text of scripture, and is not afraid to thumb his nose at any traditional formulation, no matter who he offends, because he really pounds the table and says he's a sola scriptura Protestant. And again, I know that it bugs him that people read his stuff and become Catholic. So maybe, I don't know the man, but maybe he's not shy about finding places to poke the Catholic Church in the eye.
Yeah.
But he does it in a very urbane, sophisticated British way.
Okay, very good. Mike, thank you so